Greetings to everyone who is tuned in, and a special salute to all freedom lovers. This is William Moore, and you're watching Beyond the Ties That Bind. Thanks for joining me for this episode of the program. I hope and pray that everyone is having as good of a day as you can possibly have as we watch America descend into chaos. I am speechless concerning the events which took place in St. Louis last night. St. Louis has now followed suit and joined the rest of major cities across the country in a downward spiral into chaos. St. Louis was relatively quiet up until last night. There were peaceful protests going on, some skirmishes, but nothing like the chaos that was witnessed last night. I blame the federal government, and I have good cause to do so, and I can pin everything on them. They are the ones responsible for this, directly responsible for this. And the city that I grew up in, that I now live approximately 40 miles south of, has now become a war zone.
So the scene has been pretty,
This morning it was reported that 4 officers were shot, and in a related yet separate incident, the former chief of police for the city of St. Louis was killed, apparently killed by protesters. So St. Louis has turned into a war zone, descended into chaos. Now, I do not agree with the looting. I do not agree with the violence. I do not agree with any of that. I do not want to see anyone hurt. I will say this, though. The police will not get any sympathy from me, especially since 3 weeks ago, the police all around the country were going around arresting people for opening up their businesses. People were being attacked by law enforcement for not wearing a mask, not social distancing. Then, as stated, people who were just trying to make a living, who didn't want their families to starve to death, who were going out and opening their businesses back up, were being ticketed and taken to jail. And then these same people were having their businesses burnt down, burnt to the ground, looted, while law enforcement just stood by and watched. Now, law enforcement is doing their job, and that is to protect the government and keep their boot on the throat of every individual within the country, and make sure that every individual within the country is obedient and compliant to the government. Now, I blame government for all of this, and it goes back to the time of Reconstruction. Around 1867 is when the Reconstruction Acts were passed by Ulysses S. Grant, part of his failed policies, where black people were actually forced off of plantations that they were actually invited to stay on by the plantation owners to be sharecroppers. Yes, that's right. You don't read about that in your history books. You read a revised history. You read history that is canned, that has been produced, reproduced by the powers that be, by the victor. Napoleon stated that history is just an agreed upon set of lies in order to maintain the myth of the victors of war. And that's what we have. People want to maintain the myth concerning the Union. But these black people were pushed off of plantations that they were going to be sharecroppers on, that they were going to be able to actually share in the wealth of the plantation. However, Reconstruction didn't allow for that. They were pushed off. They were pushed into shanty towns, ghettos. Men were forced to go out west to work and die on a railroad that was being constructed at the behest of the United States government. And ever since that day, even though it's no longer called Reconstruction, we still have the same type of policies that keep black people down, that do not afford them any opportunity whatsoever. I mean, you can try and turn your head away from the truth, but the truth is still the truth, whether you believe it or not. Now, these people had opportunity taken from them. Instead of allowing slavery to die off slowly, which it was doing, the southern states were making slavery illegal, but it was forced by the Union because it was part of Lincoln's PR campaign at the Gettysburg Address and the Emancipation Proclamation, which Lincoln could not legally make. And, of course, the Emancipation Proclamation did not apply to the Union states, the northern states, only to the southern states. And everyone back at that time knew that it was nothing more than a PR campaign and that Lincoln was full of caca. So, since that time, black people have been used as political pawns by both parties. But in recent history, the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party makes sure that they receive enough to live on, but not enough to succeed. They keep opportunity away from them because they don't want to lose that voting block. Because people are going to lean more towards the right when they start being successful and they start making money and they start earning a living and they start purchasing goods with that which was earned from the sweat of their brow, with their own blood, sweat, and tears. And you become more responsible and you have an appreciation for things. Now, I'm not going to let the Republican Party off whatsoever. Both parties keep this entire country within slavery. I mean, white people are slaves too, but not to the extent of black people, because opportunity has never been afforded to them since the end of the Civil War, when they could have had it in the Confederacy. And I realize that everyone gets their history from the government indoctrination centers known as public schools. I know that people get their history from movies and television created by Zionists out in Hollywood. But the truth of the matter is, they've had opportunity taken away from them since the Reconstruction Acts. They just became a different type of slave. And now we've all been made slaves to this corporation known as the United States of America. Some of us prisoners, because those of us who know the truth, we're prisoners to this corporation. We're no longer slaves, we're prisoners. So, freedom is the answer. Because freedom levels the playing field. Freedom allows everyone an equal opportunity to gain wealth. That's what freedom does. Government and freedom cannot coexist. I say this over and over until I get it into the heads of everyone who may hear this. I know that many of you who watch this already love freedom. You already understand this. You may have not heard before of the Reconstruction Acts and what has actually taken place in this country. This is what you get when you keep people oppressed. When you keep them under your thumb. Eventually they are going to rise up. They're not going to want to take this anymore. And this is what happens. They were being given at the end of the war between the states, or Lincoln's War of Aggression, they were being given opportunity by the southern states. But the Union came in and took over the southern states and passed the Reconstruction Acts and killed many former Confederate soldiers who would not take loyalty oaths to the Union. And in the midst of this, they pushed these people into ghettos, into shanty towns. They pushed black people into ghettos and shanty towns. They weren't worried about their physical well-being. They just wanted to create a class that they could control. They wanted to keep the black people under their control, under their thumb. They didn't want to give them true freedom. Not at all. No government wants to give its subjects freedom. And this government has been corrupt from the beginning, from 1787, with the drafting of the United States Constitution, when 39 psychopaths signed a document which would protect their economic interest, which would give them control over the rest of the population of the country, which would allow them and give them the power to lay taxes, power of unlimited taxation, and then give them the power, in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 15, to raise up a militia, to execute the laws of the Union, to suppress insurrections and repel invasions. Suppress insurrections, what they're doing now. You know, the police, the law enforcement, all they're doing right now is protecting the government. They don't protect anyone's businesses. They don't protect anyone at all. They don't protect anyone's homes. They're just there to watch America burn and protect that infrastructure known as government. You know, a lot of people, they say, well, I don't know how a voluntarist free society would work. I don't see how we could get that to work. So we continue on with the same failed government. We've been that brainwashed to believe that, well, I don't see how voluntarist or anarchical society would work. And anarchy does not mean, chaos. It means without rulers. Without rulers. That's all it means. Just like monarchy would be a kingdom with a king, a one ruler system. Anarchy is no rulers. But people say, I don't know how we would get that to work. How would that work? Are you so afraid of freedom that you're willing to stay a slave to government just because you don't know how freedom would work? You're afraid to take upon the responsibility of freedom? So you say, well, let's just stay with this same failed system. Let's stay within this government that keeps all of the individuals within the country oppressed. Let's stay with this government. Let's stay the course with this government that bombs other countries and kills thousands of individuals within other countries just so it can control that country's natural resources. Let's stay within this cage because we can't trust ourselves. We've been brainwashed to believe we can't trust ourselves outside of this cage known as government. Let's just stay in this comfortable slavery, this peaceful slavery where we're taken care of by our master government. Well, I would rather have dangerous freedom than peaceful slavery because, as we can see right now, No, slavery is peaceful. We will rise up against oppression eventually. Even though people didn't rise up against the oppression during the lockdowns, but people will rise up against it eventually. And that's what you have in these communities. And I don't agree with the looting. I believe that just plays into the hands of the government. It strengthens their hand when they come in full force and start blowing stuff up. And then people are saying, well, President Trump, send in the tanks. You really want that? Are you that scared of what's going on right now? Now, I don't like what's going on. And I want to be in a situation to where I'm not exposed to this, but I'm not so scared of it that I want the government to come in with tanks. Haven't the people within government destroyed enough? And then you're asking them to come in with tanks and destroy even more? And possibly destroy the lives of thousands of people? Are you that scared to where people are crying out for government? And are people so scared of freedom that they're not willing to give voluntarism a try? A free society a try? Are you that scared of freedom that you want government to continue to have its boot upon your throat for the rest of your life? Are you that scared of freedom to where you say, well, I don't know how anarchy would work? Well, so we continue with the failed policies of government just because we don't know how anarchy would work? We don't try something that promises freedom, promises wealth to every individual, because freedom gives everyone a level playing field to where everyone has an opportunity to taste of wealth, to partake of wealth. You don't have government intervention. You don't have government restraint. Everyone is free. You live by the rule that the master gave us, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And the reverse of that, don't do unto others as you would not want them doing unto you. Do no harm. I hear people, I don't know how anarchy would work. So what you're telling me is you believe that someone has a higher calling, higher claim to your life and property than you do? Because freedom says that only you have a claim to your life and property. That's what freedom says. Freedom says do no harm. Freedom says allow everyone to have an opportunity for wealth. That's what freedom says. And that's what we need, because freedom and government cannot coexist. It's time to abolish government. It's time to rid ourselves of the chains of government which oppress people and cause this type of chaos within society. And that's what we're seeing. A result of government is this type of chaos. This is what you get when you have government, when you have a controlling government which keeps one sector of people, one ethnicity down so it can control them and create a voting bloc. People that will vote for them and continue to vote them in office as long as they throw enough breadcrumbs their way so those people can go on living. But the life that they've been living isn't worth shit. And that's why this is taking place. All lives matter. But until we do see that, every group, whether it's the unborn, whether it's Japanese people. Remember the Japanese internment camps? You probably weren't taught about that in high school, were you? Black people, white people, Native Americans who have suffered through the worst of tortures, the worst of atrocities of any people in America. Until we realize that all of those lives matter, and until we have true freedom, we're going to have what we have now. It's going to rise up every few years. And All of this looting, I'm talking to you people who are in the protest, all of this looting, this violence just plays into the government's hands. It strengthens their hand because when they do decide to come in and start blowing stuff up, they're going to look justified in doing so because of the looting, because of the violence, because of the killing. You're playing right into their hands. You're doing exactly what they want you to do so they can come down hard on you. They create a problem, then there's a reaction, and then of course they provide a solution, and that solution always, always, always results in restriction upon freedom. It's time that people educate themselves about the government, about that stupid document known as the Constitution that restricts freedom and protects government. People think it's the other way around, that it restricts government, yet protects freedoms, and it does no such thing. No such thing at all. It was created to protect the economic interest of the government. And that's what we're seeing right now. And nothing that the government is doing is unconstitutional. Because of that necessary and proper clause, they have, they will do and make laws which are necessary and proper to keep the union safe. So people, we need to educate ourselves and then rise up as a people, a show of force, and it doesn't need to be violent, and go to Washington, D.C. and tell everyone, every bureaucrat, every congressman, you're relieved of your duty. Because all you did was oppress us. And we will not be oppressed anymore. We want freedom. This is William Moore for Beyond the Ties That Bind. Until next time, remember, no one has a higher claim to your life and property than you do. And do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Do no harm.
God